Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my crazy landlord constantly comes into my house even when I am not home. When I confront him about this, he threatens to evict me. When I stand up to this bully, he calls in a fake bomb threat and gets me swatted. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So I rent a house from a landlord that I didn't realize was insane before well after the contract was signed. I had a 1-year contract I couldn't afford to break, and about 2 months in, he started to show me the true person that he was. This basically started with him showing up all the time to check on me and the property. I felt this was really weird, and I always just told him things were fine so he would leave and I could get on with my day. I know he owns the property, but I don't think a landlord should be that focused on checking his properties. He gave me a bad vibe, and I knew that after my year was up, I was going to move despite how annoying, time-consuming and expensive it was. Then he decided talking to me was not enough and he would demand to come in and start looking around at everything, making notes of everything, and if I had to take a guess, he was trying to find any kind of invisible damage so he could blame it on me and never have to fix it. He even told me once that I would have to pay to repaint the wall because of a nail holding up a painting. The thing was, the nail was already there when I moved in. I did not put a hole into a wall. If I wanted to put something up in a space I did not own, I would use a command strip personally. Anyway, I don't want to bore you with every little detail, so I will just jump forward another month or so. I came home one day to find my landlord standing at my front door. I assume he was waiting for me, but then I see him open the door and let himself in. For people that live in different parts of the world, a landlord is not allowed to just enter one of their rented properties unless they are doing something specific, such as letting in somebody for a repair or letting in the police. However, he was just letting himself in and wandering around like he owned the place. Okay, I mean he did, but you know what I mean. I was not happy and I walked in to confront him. Me? What are you doing? You cannot just let yourself into my house. Landlord, I own the property, so that means I can do whatever I want. If you don't like it, I can change the locks right now and have you out on the street. Me, we got a contract and I know what it said in there. You cannot just break in because you feel like snooping around my stuff. Get out now. I made a movement towards him to try and intimidate him out of my house, but he did not fall for it. Instead, he came at me and punched me to the ground. He then kicked me in the ribs, and by the time I was up, he had left. I was furious and wanted to call the police on him for assault. I knew that a lawsuit might make the entire rental an issue, so I wanted to find somewhere else to live first. Afterwards, I would sue him for assault and press charges and try to get the courts to break the contract because of that. I will admit I was dumb and should have just called the police in that first moment. A few days later, he called the police that I was heavily armed and fabricated a fake email to himself that I had a bomb and was threatening to blow up the property. A SWAT team was called in and my door was busted down and I was tackled to the floor. The entire house got flipped as they looked for the non-existent bomb and weapons. I was already in pain from his assault, but now the SWAT team made the pain in my ribs even worse. I was basically crying on the ground, and after about 45 minutes they decided my house was clear of weapons. They questioned me and I told them how I had no idea what they were talking about. I gave them access to my emails so they could see I never sent one to the landlord and he had lied to swat me. Due to the pain, I was taken to the hospital to find that I had 2 broken ribs between everything and I wanted nothing more than to get out of that house. I honestly did not feel safe there anymore, so I slept at a friend's place for a few days while I recuperated. The police told me that they would look into my landlord. Swatting somebody is a huge problem and wasting police resources can cause some serious fines or even jail time. I got a letter that I was being taken to court to be evicted on the basis of destroying the rental property. While I was gone, he went and took pictures of the house that was destroyed from the SWAT team. I just decided to go to that and hope I could show my evidence that he was crazy and get out of my contract. He showed them the photos and told them that he came to my property and saw that I had destroyed the entire place. He wanted me evicted but also wanted me to pay the rest of the year's rent and let him keep the security deposit. I showed the courts my paperwork that the same day I was swatted by him and even the fact that I had 2 broken ribs. I told him about the assault and that he was showing up and walking in without my permission. The assault was thrown out because there was no way to prove any of my injuries came from him instead of when I was tackled. As for the rental, the court was not gonna force me to pay a year of rent and move out because it was clear what he had done. Apparently, this was not the first time he was in court about evicting somebody with a similar story of the house being destroyed. My guess is he showed up when nobody was home, would destroy the place, take pictures, and then blame the tenant. I was allowed to break my contract and live in the house until the end of the month when I would move out and find another place to go. He was also ordered to give me back my security deposit, which he did not like one bit. I moved out, and a couple months later I heard from police that he was found guilty of swatting and was facing some serious charges. He had his license taken away, so he was not allowed to be a landlord anymore, which I was really happy about. He was, thank God, also sentenced to 2 years for calling in the fake bomb threat. I don't really want to know when he gets out or what he does with his life now. I just want to make sure he never comes near me again, because if he does, I might punch first and ask questions later. He was clearly a scam artist trying to get more money that he already got as a landlord. I did not know why he thought he had to do that though, because I know he was making a profit off of me already. Maybe it was greed or maybe he was crazy, but seriously everybody, make sure you get a good vibe off of a future landlord, because otherwise you might regret renting from them. And Ripe Stars, I'm curious, have you ever dealt with an awful landlord? Please feel free to share your personal story either in the comments or on r/ripestories on Reddit. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled A Story of Mega Entitlement. So in my late teens I met a girl who I swore was the one. At the time she was the first girl I ever dated that I had an actual relationship with. I was young and very naive, and she was the first girl I ever said I love you to, and I thought that meant it was a forever deal. Things were awesome for a couple of years, and then she started a second job at a liquor store to make some extra money so that she could afford to buy a car and start thinking about moving out of her mom's place. Admirable, I thought. I totally supported her on that one. I was still living at home with my mom, and the construction job I worked at definitely did not pay enough to move out and afford a car. With her working 2 jobs though, we could definitely afford a place of our own. After a few months of working this liquor store job and one robbery that a guy punched in her head, she started acting different. I chalked it up to the robbery incident. That seriously messed her up a bit. It did not ring any massive alarms, but she had bought a car and started giving one of her male co-workers rides home after her shift was over. I personally thought nothing of it. It was what it was. I found out from not only her co-workers but her best friend that she had been cheating on me with this guy once they left work. When I confronted her about it, she cried and denied it. I was in love. I believed her. I just thought it was jealous rumors. A friend of mine brought up going to Mexico for a trip with the guys. I had never been on a plane before, let alone been out of Canada, so I was all over that. I had a bit of money saved up from work, so 4 of us went without my girlfriend. While in Mexico, I cheated. I feel so bad about it to this day, but back then, 15 years ago, I guess I was just trying to get back at her. When I got back to Canada, I felt so guilty that I went right to a jewelry store and bought an engagement ring. I was so stupid. Yes, I Chandler Binged it. She said yes, and life was all good again. We were engaged for a year and a half, and she was still living with her mom. I was still living with mine. During this time, she broke up with me 4 times over the dumbest stuff. She came over to my place once and her clothes were not dry from when I had put them in a washing machine. Close but not quite. She opened up the dryer, grabbed her clothes and stormed out. She dumped me when she got home. That was the first time. I was crushed. It happened a couple times after that, but they were not that serious. Personally, I was not worried. Things went okay after those 3 times. The final time we broke up, I was out of town on a business training course. I called her from my hotel on Valentine's Day, asking how she wanted to celebrate. We need to talk. That's how she started every breakup. By this point, I was done. She said she didn't know if this is what she wanted with her life, yada yada. I agreed. I didn't want a girl who was gonna break up with me every time she was upset. I told her to come over when I got back, bring me the ring, and I will give her whatever she left at my mom's place. Simple, yes? Not so much though. This is where she goes stupid. She shows up to my mom's house with her mom in tow. She gives me the ring, I hand her some clothes she left, some shampoo and a copy of The Notebook on DVD that I paid for but didn't want. She looked confused. I asked her what the problem was. She deadass looked me right in the face and said, "Shouldn't I get more?" I thought I misheard her. I asked her what she meant. "Well, we were engaged, so I should get more stuff. I'm entitled to half, right?" I burst out laughing. Not even kidding, as heartbroken as I knew I was gonna be over the next little while, that was the moment that I had zero love or respect for her. We talked for a bit with her mom, nobody else was home at my house, who also thought that she was entitled to more than her belongings. After about 5 minutes of them pointing at things in my mom's house and saying they want it, I kicked them out. My last words to her as she stood by the front step looking like she wanted to fix things was, "Bye, good luck. You're gonna need it, both of you." Bullet successfully dodged. Wow. To this day, that still floors me. How the F do you think you deserve my mom's belongings, especially when we don't even live together? Epilogue. I still talk to her mom and her brother once in a very blue moon. My ex is now a fentanyl-addicted girl of the street who is in and out of prison and living on the streets. When we were together, she was mildly straight edge, even refused to try pot with me and rarely drank. When her brother tells me stories of finding her sleeping in alleys and complaining about the government spraying meth in the air to kill homeless people, it floors me. She also talks extremely ghetto, which is also weird because she was pretty proper when we were together. I always wonder what would happen if I saw her working at a street corner. At this point in my life, I would probably feel nothing but pity for her. That's about it. I still cannot fathom how the hell she went left as hard as she did. Unfortunately, edit, this girl could not drive. She bought a crappy car, a maroon-colored POS, and drove it for maybe a month before she crashed it. Her insurance company got her a rental car which she proceeded to drive into a pole in the first week. They refused her a rental after that, I believe, and when she got her car back from repairs, she drove it for maybe a little over a month and crashed it again. After that, her insurance company raised her premiums so high that even Bill Gates would rethink mass transit. She had to park the car after it got repaired the second time. It sat outside of her mom's townhouse for God knows how long. A friend of mine that lived across from her told me that she saw my ex almost every night come home from work, start her car, sit in it for a while, shut it off, and then go inside. At least she was not crashing it anymore. Cheater karma at it, so this story just came to me while I was thinking back to the whole liquor store fiasco. After I called her out for cheating and we made up, we went to a boxing event. Tonya Harding was in town boxing a local girl. It was hilarious. The local girl punched Tonya in the face so much, but it was Tonya's reaction to getting punched that was hilarious. After the event, we cabed to the liquor store she worked at to pick up beer. The guy she cheated on me with was working the till. My ex was hammered, and as we were paying for the booze, my ex fell down and ripped a gigantic fart. It was heinous. I tried to pick my ex up, but the smell hit me like a brick. Hot, thick, chewy fart stink. Good lord. It wasn't quiet either. I picked her up and looked at the dude. He had the most disgusted look on his face. Chew on that for a while, dude. Long time at it later, so I'm getting a lot of heat calling me an idiot, saying everything is fake. It's all good. The truth is, I met this girl a little over 17 years ago. I was a very different person back then. I absolutely regret cheating on her out of immaturity, and obviously I was not ready for a real relationship at that point, no matter how much I thought I was. As far as proof goes, I would be more than happy to talk to a mod to give whatever proof I can. I will try. And the next one is titled, Mother-in-law Went Too Far. So this story starts a little over a year ago when my father-in-law, 70, was diagnosed with cancer. By the time they found it, it had metastasized into neighboring organs and eventually into his spine. During the time when it was first discovered, mother-in-law, 58, was under extreme mental duress and would show up at our house sometimes in the middle of the night crying. My wife, 30 at the time, was very pregnant, and so, with her permission, I, 29, would console mother-in-law, hug, assure everything was going to be fine, etc., and we went on a vacation as an entire family, and what we thought was gonna be a kind of quiet experience was more of a celebratory one. The treatment was working, the cancer had stopped progressing, and he was in better shape than he should have been. On this vacation, however, my wife and I had a little extra time one morning, and so we lounged out on the balcony of the suite we all had stayed in. To be perfectly honest, I had morning wood and was wearing tight shorts, so you can get the picture. Mother-in-law came out onto the balcony as we were stirring, and I caught her staring at my crotch. We made eye contact and she looked away, and I greeted her quickly to make it not awkward. The moment passed and everything seemed okay. Except ever since then, she makes a point of lingering in hugs and brushing her breasts against me when she asks to hold our child, which is every time I'm in the room with them. So then I try to make a point of not being in the room with her when I'm with my child or coming up with an excuse to not pass them off. So then it all came to a head this past Thanksgiving when we met at their house. There was a moment when I was walking towards the kitchen and she came down the hallway towards me. The hallway is tight at their house and slowly moved past me with her rear poked out into my crotch. That was the last straw for me. I had debated up until that point on telling my wife because everything until then felt as though it could be hearsay and mother-in-law would just say it was all in my head. So the following week I sat my wife down and told her everything that had happened from until Thanksgiving, and she was furious. She agreed with me though that it could all just be a misunderstanding and wanted to see how mother-in-law interacted with me in the next couple of weeks to see for herself if anything was off. She watched and I could see in her eyes how much she was doing inside when we brought our child over to their house, and her mom immediately went to take them out of my arms and pressed herself against me in the process. I made eye contact with my wife and she blew up. Long story short, the family is pissed at me for starting it all and are calling me the a-hole because the family had finally gotten into a place of being at peace and father-in-law was doing better, etc. I did not think of it really in those terms, just how uncomfortable I felt with the situation, and maybe I am. But anyway, I thought I would post here and see what you all thought. So Reddit, am I the butthole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, I will relay this question to you. Do you think that OP is the a-hole in this story or not? Let me know what you think in the comments. Update to the story. I woke up to a text this morning from father-in-law wanting to grab lunch today, just me and him. I'm going probably against my better judgment. Comment number 1, not the a-hole. The only person to blame is your mother-in-law. She is insufferable. No one can blame you for anything. You are definitely not the a-hole. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. You did not ruin anything. Mother-in-law did so by being inappropriate. I know the titles here are meant to be clickbaity, but let's be absolutely clear. Mother-in-law caused this and should be the one shamed by the family. This story is about my grandfather and how he outsmarted his brother after his brother exploited their mother. About 40 years ago, my great-grandparents were dying. Great-grandfather was gone and great-grandmother was on her way out, abusing morphine to lessen the pain. She was writing a will when she was sober, but she was rarely sober. Her estate was essentially what would be a multi-millionaire's estate adjusted for inflation. Her estate was in Ireland while my grandfather and his brother were in England. My grandfather went to his local pub to see brother. He did this every Saturday night to keep in touch with his brother. This time something was different. His brother was not there. Instead, his brother spontaneously moved to Ireland and spent time with his mother, who was heavily on morphine. The morphine was clouding her judgment, and beat in mind she was writing a will. My grandfather's brother, we will call him Lee from now on, went to Ireland to cozy up to his mother in hopes of getting her whole estate. My grandfather didn't know Lee was doing this and didn't think much of it. Fast forward about a year and great-grandmother kicks the bucket. Funeral day arrives and everything goes fine until they get to the will. Great-grandmother was high on morphine when she was making the will, and everything she had in the will went to Lee. Nobody else got anything in the will. Put 2 and 2 together and everyone was pissed off at Lee, but the will could not be contested because there were people who signed in the witness of the will, including her attorney. Lee becomes outcasted, but everyone gives up on trying to save their mother's things, except Granddad. Lee inherited a large plot of land in Ireland, nothing special, except it was in rural Ireland. It could not support a septic tank and it is worth a crap ton of money. The house on this plot was right on the edge of the land, but the septic tank was on the neighbor's land. Lee did not know this, so he didn't buy the land next to the house. This is not up to building code, so the house cannot be sold until the septic tank is on his land. My grandfather knew this and bought the land surrounding this house. Lee fixed up the house and got a building inspector to inspect the house and check that it was up to code so he could sell the house. The inspector caught the septic tank and told Lee that he couldn't sell the house unless the tank is on his land. Lee went to the neighbors to buy the small plot of land that had the septic tank, only to find out that they sold it to my grandfather, and my grandfather was unwilling to sell the land to Lee. Lee invested easily over £300,000, which is roughly 411,000 US dollar, before Ireland went to euro in the house, so the house was in great shape and was supposed to be resold. Lee cannot sell the house now for a profit because my grandfather owns the land the septic tank is on. Lee cannot put a septic tank on his land because the land cannot support a septic tank. My grandfather put Lee into a checkmate where Lee has to sell the land and everything on it to my granddad. My grandfather is not going to buy the land for anything more than 5,000 euros, and to this day Lee still won't sell the land to my grandfather. My grandfather did not want the land, he just wanted to return the favor to Lee. Lee is now just scraping by on his plot of land because of his stubbornness, and he still to this day won't accept defeat. Edit number 2. My grandfather spent as much time as possible with his dying mother. He was there when she went out, and he was there as much as he possibly could. At the time, he had kids to take care of and a job that was not very lenient. He made do with what he could. And guys, is it just me, or are the revenge stories surrounding grandpas usually some of the most satisfying ones? Multiple times already in the past we have read revenge stories from grandpas or grandmas all over the countries, but I have to say these are often some of my favorites. Anyway, if you have watched until here, I would really appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance, your help is very much appreciated. And guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please feel free to check out my Patreon over at patreon.com/ripeyoutube, or join my YouTube membership program by clicking the join button to get access to even more exclusive videos. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you again tomorrow.